What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into Weekly Cheddar. Jake Stravinky with you guys. It is Tuesday, a little bit of a new time, but had to definitely go live for today just because the Packers make a move, and we're going to kind of talk about the fallout and all of that. We'll talk, questions and all that good stuff for you guys today. So, yeah, a lot to get to, and the best part about trades is you can kind of, take a little peek at next year's draft in a sense because of the fallout of this move. So that's an exciting part of this. So yeah, we're gonna dive in and get this thing rolling. What's going on? Chris says hello. Joseph says what's going on. Election stuff's really annoying. Hey, that's why the trade deadline and the college football playoff rankings were today. Right? That's why they made them today. But yeah, we'll be talking Preston Smith. Obviously, the Q&A is open as always. We'll get to everything that you guys would like to ask. From that standpoint, Prince Capsaicin, what's going on? Says Preston heading to a pretty good situation. Glad he's headed to the AFC. Yeah, I know Clayton mentioned it. I know quite a few others mentioned it. Not everybody's on the same page with this, which is understandable. Maybe because of just the body type and whatnot as a player. But Preston Smith going back to a 3-4 in Pittsburgh probably seems like the right move for him, honestly, even though it's kind of rare to see guys who are 6'5", 265 be better fits in a 3-4 than a 4-3. That's a little counterintuitive, especially because you like to have those 3-4 guys drop into coverage very often. But I think for Preston, it gives him a little more space to work with in terms of utilizing the length to his advantage, right? I think that can be a big part of that for him. So, wishing him the best for sure. He was, around here a long time. Signed a second deal with Green Bay, so it was clear they wanted to bring him back. The locker room definitely takes a hit in terms of veteran presence, but it's going to be time for others to kind of step up and be leaders in that room. So, yeah, Pittsburgh's a really nice spot for him. He doesn't have to be the guy there, right? He's going to be in a four-man rotation, right, with Watt, with Highsmith. Those two dudes are studs. Obviously, Watt is one of the best in the NFL. You have Nick Herbig there, and then you have Preston Smith. So that's a really, really nice room for that defense to be able to keep rotating guys, keep guys fresh for the postseason. So they are in win-now mode for sure, Pittsburgh. And I still think Green Bay is, but Green Bay likes to do this, right? They did this last year, and people were like, why would they do this? Flexibility with the contracts, right? Get that off the books and, recoups a pick somehow, even shedding the contract, which is really nice, opens up some cap space for the next two seasons, which is going to be valuable, right? Because of the Zach Tom extension, and maybe they're bringing back Josh Myers, who knows? And there's going to be receivers who are sticking around. Jaden Reed's definitely going to be doing that, right? Reed is going to be sticking around. After that, you can kind of throw toss-ups up in the air. Romeo Doubs probably going to stick around, right, if we had to make that guess. So, yeah, I think, it stinks to see someone like Preston go from a locker room standpoint, but I do think it is a contract shed, and it does make a lot of sense for the Packers. Yes, it would have definitely been nice for the Packers to acquire somebody today. I know there was a lot of talk, about Ojulari from the Giants. Didn't quite understand that at 6'3", 240. I just don't think he is the guy, right? I think he is much better as a 3-4 outside linebacker, and just Green Bay doesn't do that anymore. Same goes for Baron Browning, who was traded to the Cardinals. So there was a lot of movement. But I think for the Packers, you had to look at like the Jadeveon Clowneys, the Chase Youngs, right? The Carl Grandersons from New Orleans, who had a massive contract, right? I know, that, there was some talk about Marshawn Lattimore a little bit earlier today. He goes to Washington. Greg Newsome was a popular one from Cleveland. That made sense, but it was going to have to be from one of the sellers. And it sounds like there were teams who called about Jeffrey Simmons in Tennessee, and that was a absolute no. Maybe somebody called about Dexter Lawrence to be funny to Joe Shane out there in New York. But, yeah, it would have – trust me, it would have been nice to have somebody like Brian Burns. But, obviously, New York's committed there as well. So you kind of had to go up and down the line in terms of like, oh, yeah, this is somebody who's definitely selling. Jacksonville could have been in that boat. But with Hines Allen and Walker, they're pretty committed there. So I think the one guy would have been interesting would have been Calais Campbell, perhaps, for Green Bay from Miami. Just didn't work out. Maybe Green Bay wasn't interested. To be fair, he's a lot older, and so adding a veteran presence like that maybe isn't what they want to do. So, yeah, it was tough that they didn't make a move. But again, just it takes two to tango. Those two tangoing have to agree to the right price. Maybe Green Bay was interested in some guys, and it just didn't work out. But with everybody, I think, is with Mike Berry on this one. We're wishing Preston the very best. Maybe we'll meet him later down the line this season. We'll see. Joseph saying that LVN and Rashawn have got to step up. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot's going to fall on their shoulders, and I'm really excited to kind of take a peek at those guys in depth, especially last season to this season. Working on something for that during the bye week. So I hope you guys stay tuned, got those notifications on for that, because that's going to be something we'll talk about a lot. A lot of evaluation to do from the Green Bay standpoint. That will all be done here. No doubt about that. So, but yeah, those two do definitely have to, make some significant strides down the stretch. So, Too Old for This is saying this is not derailed, so I'll keep it on track. Appreciate it. Says Goot is no stranger to trading a key player, especially I think Too Old for This, more even like a key locker room player at this point, like Rasul Douglas and then Preston, with the team teetering on mediocrity to keep the players humble. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. But yeah, I think a lot of it is contract shedding, keeping the team younger at this point. But yeah, I mean, they're 6-3, which is great. That's great that Green Bay's 6-3. If you told me after the Love injury on the opening on that Friday night against Philly that they'd be 6-3 that evening through 9 games, I'd be like, wow, I don't know what happened, but I'm glad to be here. But I think it's also it's fair to say, yes, 6-3, great. Need to be better, right? And keep yourself to that higher standard of play, especially down the stretch where it's just there's not going to be any AFC South team waiting for you, right? You've played them all. And you've beat them all, which is great. But the NFC North is not going to take prisoners. We know that. San Francisco isn't either, now that McCaffrey is going to potentially be back. Listen, I thought it was going to be a cakewalk game. Miami's offense is no joke. Now it will be a little colder when they play on Thanksgiving night. We'll see. And then Seattle, who, listen, are they the greatest run team right now? No. Could they surprise anybody and beat them on any given Sunday? Yes, they could. So, yeah, it's not going to get any easier down the stretch. Green Bay is going to have to, clean a lot of things up, and I expect them to clean quite a few things up. There's always going to be mistakes, but you want to shrink the mistakes, keep those margins a little bit tighter for yourself. Not to get political, but I think the Bears suck. That's really good. Chris N says LVN's not ready. It's good that they have other guys, right? And I know maybe Aaron Mosby and Brenton Cox getting a lot of reps isn't what everybody envisioned to begin the season, but that's where we're at. Kingsley Enagbare, I am excited to see him get more snaps. Honestly, I think he's not the biggest guy, right? He's the smallest of the guys really Green Bay has in that room of those 4 guys, including Preston, who's now out of there, who, he is the smallest of the 4. Still is making good plays, still, packs a punch as a pass rusher. So it's going to be exciting to see him get more reps as well. 12 is saying 6-3 can allow the players get too comfortable with their mistakes, need to be better for sure. Yeah, the margin of error, right, against a team like Jacksonville and a team like Arizona is much bigger than it's going to be against Minnesota and Detroit again and Chicago twice and the Niners down the stretch. It just is, right? There's not going to be a lot of leeway in and Detroit proved it to you on Sunday, right? Where it's like, yeah, well, we're not going to make many mistakes. You can't make many mistakes. If you make many mistakes, you're not winning the game. We're going to run away with this, and you're going to kind of have to backdoor, make it a 10-point game at the end. So you're going to have that. The margins are going to get thinner from here on out. It's honestly, couldn't have asked for a better spot to get a bye, honestly, right? Like smack dab in the middle of the season, really nice spot for that to kind of regroup. But the one thing is to not get too comfortable. If they want to win this division, they're going to have to turn it on, right? They're in 3rd right now. And 6-3 being in 3rd, that stinks, right? That sucks, to be frank, right? It's not great. You don't expect 6-3 to be in third, but maybe that's the kind of motivation they need, right? Like, hey, you're 6-3, but you're the 7th seed right now if the season ended today. You are barely in the playoffs. You need to kick it in high gear. You need to go chase down Minnesota and Detroit, and I think that could be good motivation as well. But yes, I do think the margin for error will go down. Now, right, so obviously Green Bay trades Preston Smith for a 7th-round pick in 2025. Now, if you remember, right, if we go over here to the current picks for these guys, it is, just 7 picks in this upcoming draft. So, and if you forget, which it took me a minute, right? It took me a minute to go, why do they only have 7? They traded that 7 for Malik Willis. So they do just have 7 at the moment. I don't imagine that's going to change, right, anytime soon. I know if you look at like Tankathon, they have a potentially, they have some projected compensatory picks out there. Green Bay, I think, has a 7th right now in terms of those. But I think you're going to see 8 picks at the most for Green Bay. They may award them a compensatory selection, but maybe a little bit more of a coin flip to this point. So 7 picks. It's going to be a little less for Goody to work with. We'll see what he does. Obviously, it's a long way off, but that's where we stand. 7 picks right now. Now, really quick, also on Preston Smith, just to take a peek. Not everything, of course, but we'll take just a little bit of a look at PFF and at Next Gen Stats and see what we see here. Obviously, PFF, it's kind of a little all over the place from what you've seen in Green Bay in his 5.5, you could say, seasons. 2020 was the kind of the 1 year, and you'll see it in Next Gen Stats too, where the production definitely dipped. 55 pressure, 13 sack season. You get to 62-9, 42-10, 45, and it just wasn't quite there this year. And I think part of that for sure is due to kind of the fit with the 4-3, and I think that's a very fair thing to point out. Just wasn't quite getting the numbers that we've seen him, and you can kind of see this here a little bit more, right? When you look at this, the sack percentage, right, for the last 3 seasons has been comfortably, in that 2% range. He's dipping to kind of where he was, and not quite to where he was in 2020, so it's not kind of necessarily that bad of a season, right, as he had there. But obviously 2019 was a special one. You're still seeing that QB pressure percentage pretty far down. And I think part of that for sure is the 4-3 versus the 3-4. It's lower than his 8% pressure rate in 2020. His time to sack is a little bit lower, which I find interesting. Time to pressure, though, is a little bit higher, right? You don't see, there's only twice he's been over 3 seconds in his time to pressure. Again, could very much be part of the scheme change. The get off has been relatively static throughout the past 5 seasons. So, I think that there's not really much else to say. I think you kind of see the dip in production across the board and what the metrics say this season. And it was kind of time, fit not working. Hafley said, we'll see how it may Hafley and LaFleur and Goody have these discussions about Preston Smith and saying maybe he can hack it because he's got the size and all that. And it just didn't work. And they're able to shed the contract for a 7. So, yeah, production not quite where he wanted to be. And to be fair, that's across the board, right? You look at everybody in the room at this point and you go, yeah, this just isn't the standard that they're held to. So it's not just Preston, but it seems like potentially the others could, I think, work a little bit better with this scheme change. And I think that's the thing. I think you got to be patient a little bit. I know last season it wasn't, at some point it wasn't in to be patient with the young team, right? At some point they got to be better and execute. And I think you could, say the same thing with LVN and Gary for sure. But Van Ness went from in the dirt, shading one tech, crazy things at Iowa, to last season, Preston Smith, or not LVN, stand-up rusher for half the season, and then going back to putting the hand in the dirt. But now he's got to go back to the 4-3 after the 3-4. That's a lot to throw at the young guy. That's a lot to throw at him, right? And that's coming from someone who wasn't really, thrilled with the selection. And the same with Gary. He's been in the 3-4 for a long time, and at 270, you're kind of usually prepped for 4-3, and that's definitely a change in how you play, right? Technically speaking, and operationally speaking and what your responsibilities are, and a lot of that changes. Do I think those two can get back on track? Absolutely. But it's, we're halfway through the season, and this is where I think you should start seeing more changes. I think you're seeing it a little bit in the last few weeks, but obviously you want to see even a step higher. So, Tool for the saying this was a very underwhelming trade deadline. Yeah, there were quite a few moves, obviously, beforehand, right, with Hopkins and Cooper and Deontay going before trade deadline day. But yeah, I think, the Lattimore one was the big one, Za'Darius moving, of course. But, there were a lot of teams that I think, you could kind of coin flip whether or not they were going to stand pat or make a move. The Dallas one was interesting, to say the least. But yeah, not the biggest trade deadline we've seen in terms of big movers. So Coach Len says more reps for Kingsley, Mosby, and Brenton Cox. Hopefully Brooks gets some of Preston's reps also at edge. That's possible. That is possible that Brooks gets reps over there on the edge. I know it's something JJ talks about a lot that he would like to see more of. I don't know. I'm 50-50 on whether or not I would rather see him on the edge or just kind of get him to, focus up on being the 3 tech going forward and kind of being that guy, because I do think Green Bay probably needs the 1 tech, space eating, double team spamming, absorb a lot of that on their defensive line, and then maybe they're going to go out and search for it this time around. But yeah, I think Kingsley getting more is a fine thing to me. I think we're going to get to see what he can really do, see what, if he can just kind of unleash and just be a game wrecker out there, which I'd love to see. But yeah, and too old for this saying. People are saying this is basically trading Preston for Malik Willis, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I mean, guy in your rotation at edge rusher, valuable position, no doubt. But for a QB who can be the backup and come in and win you some games, you got to take you take the QB every time over the edge rusher. Not that edge rusher isn't valuable, but yeah, that's a nice little trade there. Which I think if you said they did that before the season, right, you would kind of be like, really? They did that? But once again, Goody making the moves that we think look kind of odd look smart. Because of course, right? Because of course we know nothing, right? So that's fair. What I will say, right, is, and again, keep dropping those Packers questions and everything you got here as Green Bay enters the bye week in the second half, or just your thoughts on some guys. We'll talk about it, but I was going to move into this just a little bit because I wanted to just look at kind of the fall of the trade, and you know what we do on this channel, right? You've those who have been here quite some time know that this channel covers the draft, right? Like that's what we do. We kind of, we get there sometimes a little bit earlier than some, and that's okay, and a little bit later than others who are doing it all year. But I definitely want to get into some of that because, here we go. Hold on, I missed a couple. Sorry, guys. Prince Capsaicin saying Jamin Davis seemed to fail at defensive end in Washington, so I don't know if we're viewing him as a defensive end or linebacker here. Good size for linebacker compared to some of our other guys. Yeah. Here, hold on. I don't know what he is currently, right? But I'm sure we can find this with Jamin Davis right here. At least this is what he was coming into the league, right, in 2021, 6'3.5", 234, which, not necessarily the biggest, not the smallest, that's for sure, but you see all the metrics, the arm length at 33, which for some people is a cutoff for the tackle position, right, but you see the vert, which is nuts, broad jump, which is nuts, 10-yard split, which is nuts, and that's maybe what some team, Washington sees that, and they go, oh, 10-yard split's good. You see a lot of edge rushers with good 10-yard splits, and maybe that's what they thought they could do, especially combined with the explosion numbers there in the vert and the broad. But it sounds like they're going to view him as a linebacker, which I think is fair. I think he's going to do, a lot of run, chase, make plays if he gets in there and plays at all at linebacker. But, it's a swing on a guy with some draft pedigree and I'm sure he got up into the 250s if he was playing defensive end for Washington, but maybe we'll see. Maybe he's back down in the 240s to play linebacker. Can Davis play Mike? Based on the collegiate tape, no. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff since like 2021, early 22 for Davis. But everything I remember, it was a lot like when the Packers drafted Quay Walker. It was kind of like, wow, yeah, this is a tremendous athlete, hits hard, tons of range, big dude who can make plays, but just doesn't seem quite like a Mike linebacker. So that's where I'm kind of at with Davis at the moment, just because I don't, from everything I remember, and I don't think if especially Washington, right, if they're moving him to defensive end, they're obviously not seeing anything with him being the long-term Mike. They bring in Bobby Wagner to kind of be that. So that kind of signals to me that Washington didn't think he could do that. Doesn't mean he can't play linebacker. Just means, yeah, that the Mike positions, I'm kind of out on that. Too old for this. Going back up, says teams are going to see this Green Bay team and game plan around making the Packers not lose. Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely ways that Minnesota can force Love into some dangerous throws, right? There's, we're going to bring pressure and see if he can respond to it. I'm sure that again, teams have the film, right? They're seeing what Green Bay's been doing, what hasn't been working, and what they can do to, get them out of their rhythm and kind of what they do best. But at the same time, right, you do some work to clean some stuff up. Jordan Love, I think maybe with the injury, he's panicking a little bit more back there and feels like he doesn't have the amount of time that he would if he was fully healthy and mobile. Maybe some of the offensive line play hasn't been the cleanest at times, right, with some shuffling. But I do think there are ways that Green Bay can combat how teams will probably play them, especially on offense going forward. But that's what's fun. That's the chess game, right? Where moves and counter moves in terms of how to beat a team every week. So that's what's fun about this sport. So Turtle saying it's Mosby season. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to see more of it, right? He had a pressure and a sack this past week. So yeah, you could see some more of it. You really, really could. But yeah, I know, again, you can throw me off track on this 2025 NFL draft fallout if you want me to, right? That's totally fine. I want to get to just some pass rush stuff, right, for these guys, and also take just a little peek at what we might be looking at going forward. So obviously, Green Bay, what they're looking at, the edge room, right? You see kind of Gary not, and I'm kind of talking out the other side of kind of what I was saying earlier, but you also have to kind of plan, in case things don't work out with Gary or with LVN, or you feel like you don't have anybody behind the two of them that you feel comfortable rotating in and having a ton of snaps, and that's maybe what we're going to see down the stretch here with them. But it brings you into like, okay, well, how do we go with the draft? I'll get to these before we go there. My only problem with Mosby is how he spells his name. It's 2 A's, not 2 R's. 2 R's would be cool. 2 R's would be cool. My name is Aaron. I'm older than him, so I have authority. Well, there you go. That's it. Too Old for This has spoken on who runs the show as head of the Aarons out here. So Turtle says Kingsley should start over LVN. See, my only thing with Kingsley over LVN is on early downs. I think at this point I trust LVN more against the run with the power that he has and the anchor that he has, right? I think that is what kind of makes the difference for me, but I don't disagree with having Kingsley out there more in second and long, third and longs, right? Get him in those pass rush situations where he can wreak havoc and do his best work, because as I said, he is kind of, even with Preston out of the fold or in the fold, he was the smallest guy for them. at defensive end who was getting a lot of snaps. So it's going to be tougher for Green Bay to have Enagbare out there on early downs. It just is because he's just not as big. Teams are going to be more prone to run at him because, they trust that, maybe he's somebody against the run who's going to be more aggressive and try to get around blocks rather than anchor and sit and leverage, right? I think I trust LVN to do that a little bit more. So I think Coach Len agrees with LVN on early downs. I assume that's what he's talking about. And then JJ has been a standout player. Yeah, Enigbare's been good. Enigbare's been good when these, when they pick his spots for him and he's able to attack and he's able to win as a pass rusher. He's done a nice job. Okay, yeah. And yeah, LVN early downs. Yeah, I just feel like he has to be out there for those going forward, especially with Preston out of the way now and being traded. Like him and Gary are the guys on early downs. You go, yeah, they're 270. This should be, anchor against the run, be that force, don't get moved off the ball, and keep that success rate down for offenses on early downs against the run. So that's what I assume we're going to see more of. But yeah, let's talk about this really, really quickly. But again, remember, feel free to ask whatever you want. Feel free to take this in another direction. But we're going to talk about it a little bit just because that's kind of what we do around here, just to take a peek at PFF's big board really quick. But there are definitely a few names that stand out immediately when you're talking about like, oh, if Green Bay needs help at defensive end or edge rusher, like where would they go? It doesn't take long, right? Texas A&M has a lot of studs right now. Nick Scourton is one of them. 6'4", 285, has been really, really good past couple seasons. Big, powerful, still pretty nimble guy who speed to power, spin, move, hand usage, utilizing that power, on all three downs. Type of player who's probably going to go pretty early, right? And as a true junior, underclassman, more time to kind of get up to speed and develop. Probably in the Packers' wheelhouse, right? LT Overton from Alabama, 6'5", 283 is a little bit bigger. But even at 283, don't really like 283 playing on the interior. I know he's had some, quite a few reps there at Alabama where he is, turning the corner as a defensive lineman, as a 3-tech, which is sick. Love that. But even at 283, I do feel like you could probably ask him to drop 7-8 pounds, and he's in the 270s where Gary was when he was drafted, and you potentially looking at a guy in that regard. I know people are going to want me to talk about Abdul Carter. I don't know. I don't know if he comes in, and this is probably right. Let's put this out there at the moment. He might not even be 6'3", 252, which is already pushing it right for this. Like that's probably not somebody Green Bay is going to go after. Kel Williams from Georgia is another one to watch for at 6'5", 265. These Georgia guys are they shine in terms of seeing all the talent and the tools and splash plays. I do think there's still some work there to go with Mikael Williams. Sawyer's going to be a goodie type for sure from Ohio State at 6'5", 260. He's right in the Kingsley and Enagbare kind of metrics in terms of the size and all that. So he'll probably fit in there. He's been really consistent according to PFF. And I think he has definitely been the better of the two Ohio State rushers. I don't love the idea in round one, which probably means they're going to pick him in round one. I know this guy from Boston College has been mocked to Green Bay. Again, 247, 6'2". I don't see that. Same with Pierce. Don't buy it there. Maybe. Got a maybe on Princely Umanbaline here from Mississippi, transfer from Florida, but unsure in that regard. Now we're cooking. Okay. Now we're cooking. Coach Lynn says defensive line, edge, or corner in the first round. Boy, you brought up the big three. That's for sure. You brought up the big three. I think just based on what we know now, based on what I've seen from this point, or to this point, I mean, I would lean edge, just because I think there's a lot more talent at the top, especially if we talk about this. A lot of these guys declare, right? You look at how deep this is already. We've talked about quite a few guys. We've passed a few guys, right? And I know I have defensive line and edge out here, but I mean, we're at 44, and we've talked about a lot of guys. Like, again, this is defensive tackle, right? Corleone, Walker is. But most of these guys are edge guys, other than the top two, Graham and Grant, right? So it's like there's a lot of guys near the top in this. And I think we haven't gotten to a few guys who I think, we should be probably talking about a little bit more. Like Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, who 6'6", 290, and I got to find this. Let me find this really quick because I want to bring this up and tell me this doesn't sound like a guy that Green Bay would draft. Now, he didn't give them to Green Bay. This guy didn't give this guy to Green Bay in the mock, but I know who he did give them to. But just read this. Really quickly, okay? All right, let's read this, okay? So here we go. Okay? So Shamar Stewart goes to Detroit in this mock, okay? Right? And this I think is a really important point here. So Texas A&M Shamar Stewart is an athletic freak, listed at 6'6" and 290. Even if the production has not quite matched the talent yet, he is just 20 years old and is a literal giant ball of clay. Did you read those two sentences to yourself again? Does that not sound like a Packer? Right, come on. Does that not sound like a Green Bay Packer? 20 years old right now. I don't remember if he's 21 by draft time. He probably is. But tell me that this isn't the guy right here. And 290's a big number for him, and he probably isn't quite that, right? He's probably in the higher 270s. You can go watch him. If you look up Shamar Stewart on Twitter and stuff, you'll see a lot of good stuff from him. The explosion to power, the hand usage, enough length to be a dominant pass rusher. But man, he can reset the line of scrimmage backward against the run. He can shed blocks. He is just a game wrecker in all sense of the word, and just that's the type of player. That's what that's the guy. And I know the Packers have been at A&M. They have watched an A&M game this fall. Someone reported, it might have been our guy on Twitter, Easton Butler, who said that they were at that game, or it was Justin M from the Draft Network, who's usually on those as these guys are visiting here. But I know Green Bay's they have been at a Texas A&M game. It just wouldn't shock me if they're kind of zeroing in here on a guy like Stewart. Now, I will say in this mock, and this is a great place to go at Daft on Draft Football if you want to get some more draft stuff as well. They gave the Packers LT Overton, who we just kind of talked about from Bama, and again, 6'4", 280, big dude. Funny enough, Texas A&M transfer, which I think is funny. 25 pressures, played all over the defensive line. Oh, and he's going to test off the charts as well. That also kind of sounds like Packers that we know, right? So, I think that, that's something where, you could probably see that. Now, Overton, we've kind of talked about he's played a lot more 3-tech, so that, maybe they could be turned away a little bit. But again, this is another one where, South Carolina, 9 pressures, a run stop, 3-tech, another guy who's just a disruptor. There are a lot of disruptors in this class along the defensive line. Quick, Coach Len says we still need a Mike, have to reshape the linebacker room around Cooper. Yeah, I'm sure that they still think that there's a chance for Walker, and they probably think there's still a chance for Tyron Hopper as well. We'll see if Hopper gets any snaps down the stretch. I think they're going to try to ride it out with Walker until they completely prove to themselves that Walker's not the guy to play Mike. But it's hard not to disagree. I think that there's a chance that Mike linebacker is still a priority for that team and could be once you get into the second, third, fourth round of the draft. I don't think we're going to see a linebacker taken super highly, at least from what I've seen to this point. A lot can change, of course, between now and the draft, but that's kind of how I see it at the moment. Linebacker would probably be a little bit later. These are probably the guys you're looking for in the early rounds. TJ Sanders kind of being another one, 6'4", 290, but he's more of a defensive interior guy. Now this guy, Landon Jackson is probably another guy who's going to go in the first. Yeah, you can see it, 6'7", 280. And he's pretty nimble too. He's worked like the Eurostep cross chop at times as an edge rusher. On the stunts, he looks good. Oh, also, Shamar Stewart turning corners on like stunts and when he's wide rushing is insane. But Landon Jackson, I mean, you go watch him play and you just kind of like, oh yeah, that looks like LVN a little bit. So another guy and a senior who could be down in Mobile. So we might get a nice little front row seat. JT Tuimoloau's been solid. He's a younger guy. He seems like he's been a better run defender than a pass rusher. He kind of has that one game that pops a ton during the season and then, kind of disappears the rest of the way. Usually it was against Penn State. Didn't quite see it this week. If we pivot to defensive tackle, I think Tyleek Williams is definitely in play, especially if they're looking for a one tech. This dude eats space like nobody's business. He's a young guy still at 21. He'll be just, a little over 22 when he's drafted, but that's a guy you should be looking at as well, especially, again, senior, could be Senior Bowl guy that Green Bay's interested in. Rutgers kind of in that same boat, 6'2", though, a little bit smaller in terms of height, but he's been phenomenal at North Carolina. I've got it on decent. Actually, let me get this really quick. Sorry. Hey, fellas, what's going on? Lee says, what a favorite Pitt did for us, a win for everyone, I think. Yeah, I think it just – Lee, yeah, I think it gives Preston a chance to go back to a scheme that he's going to be better at. I think it gives Green Bay the opportunity to evaluate, their edge room if they're going to go a different direction come draft time, which is kind of what, we're going over right now. And the contract is shedding. So that's – yeah, I think it's pretty solid all around. But – yeah, Lee and Coach Lem both on that page of like, yeah, that's Shamar Stewart sounds like a Packer already. Is he a 4-3 edge? I believe A&M runs 4-3, but I'll double check on that. But I mean, he's got the hand in the dirt all the time, right? He's built for the 4-3. I know there's there's different responsibilities, 4-3 versus 3-4. At that size, right, in theory, he should be playing defensive end, but I've seen a lot of reps hand in the dirt. He has, he can sit in that, some people call the motorcycle stance, right, in the two-pointer and get after things, but I do think like that's a player you'd probably want, for the most part, being a 4-3 end. Same with Ashton Galati from Louisville, but I on decent authority from a guy who's, on the Packers trends that might not be the guy for Green Bay, but, oh, man, dude's hustle sacks, right, powerful, shoot gaps, right, just great hand usage all over the film in terms of, stopping the run and getting after QBs. So he'll be somebody I think a lot of people really like down the stretch as well. Obviously these two a little bit lighter in the 240s. You're not going to see that. Patrick Payton's got a little bit better as the season's gone on. I know this grade doesn't look good. Early, it didn't look good. A little bit on the lighter side still as well. And I know that everybody's been talking about Derek Harmon and have taken notice. Yes, I'm in terms of defensive line. Coach Lynn said we did Preston a solid good for Green Bay. Yeah, I think so. And he said, and Coach Lynn also, do we have 8 picks now? Actually, we do not. We got that round 7 from Pittsburgh, but we traded that round 7 of our own for Malik Willis. So essentially, Preston for Malik Willis. Only 7 picks. Maybe getting a compensatory 7th. We'll see. That's in the projection right now at some sites, but there's no guarantee. So it could be 8, but if it's 8, it's probably going to be 2 7ths. And one of them will be at the end of the draft. So, yeah. Because, Lee's saying, if Lee's asking, do you see us hanging on to Kenny 3 more years with his lack of effectiveness, or bite the bullet and move him somehow? Yeah, I mean, want to try it? Should we go there? Might as well, since we're here, right? Because, I mean, the film and the numbers, I think, are kind of telling you what we kind of knew, right? You look at QB pressure percentage, 6.9%. He's had 11% the last 2 years. Now, I understand that Sometimes it's going to be different assignments a little bit more for him in the 4-3, but it just seems like he's not always gap sound in the run game either. And, part of that is the scheme switch where he's just maybe not taking to it as well. But as I said, even as a pass rusher, right, his time to pressure is still pretty good, right? When you look at 2.83, 2.82, 2.89, and it's gone, it's been going down, which is good. Obviously the sack production hasn't been there, and the pressure percentage isn't the greatest. So, yeah, it just feels like we're not quite there anymore, and the run defense has been pretty tough to watch at times. I was surprised they did the extension. I remember kind of talking about that when we were either a week or two before the draft or even after, kind of talking like, I'm surprised Green Bay didn't go defensive line, right? We talked about, how Johnny Newton fell to round 2, and there were plenty of guys that Green Bay could have looked at, right? We talked about Aurora Rowe from Clemson and the guy from Duke, who I can't think of his name at the moment. We were kind of talking about those guys, and we're like, oh yeah, Green Bay could definitely do that because maybe they're moving on from Kenny, and then the Kenny extension comes out, and that was kind of wild. I think a lot of us, were probably taken aback by that. And yeah, it's going to be weird. I don't know how they're going to move on. Because that's a contract people probably aren't going to be wanting to take on, unless they think they can get the best out of him. And I'm sure that they've seen the recent play, so might be a tough sell unless you find a team who they feel like, this is the perfect fit. We know what he can do. We've seen 22 and 23 seasons. We think we can get him back to that point. Then maybe you might see a team bite on that. But it's going to have to be a specific team if they can move on. Or as you mentioned, Lee, just kind of bite the bullet and eat the cap. I imagine they're not going to do that this offseason, just considering that they're like, yeah, we believe, we're committed. They're probably going to ride this thing out another year if they don't trade him. So you might be looking at 2026 offseason where they move on. It was just a strange extension. It really was. I'm still kind of surprised that they did that. So, yeah, it was a weird one. It was really a weird one to think about. So, and that, that kind of brings in the Harmons and the, guys we kind of mentioned, Tyleik Williams and, either of the Michigan guys, if Green Bay's down with that and it's a possibility and they're available. But it was a weird one. It was a strange extension. So, and you can see there's some other guys down the way that we'll be talking about. Walter Nolan will be talked about a lot during the cycle if he declares as a junior. Danny Dennis Sutton from Penn State is in that mold, 6'5", 266 of guys who are like tools and potential over current production, and a young guy is a junior if he declares. So that's somebody who we probably keep an eye on as well. But yeah, those are some guys there. I know Coach Lem brought up linebackers. We can kind of add them to the mix. I don't remember where PFF has their first. Stutzman is the first one, 6'4", 241. Yeah, it's possible you could get a guy like Stutzman to be the Mike. I imagine he's not going to go super early. Jahad Campbell from Alabama is another one that's interesting. Consistently getting better according to PFF, and another big dude for the middle. So it's a possibility. I just linebackers early. I think you're going to see teams kind of shy away from that. Jalen Walker's interesting, but Jalen Walker's probably going to be more like Cooper. So I don't imagine we'll see that. But, top of the draft, your Barrett Carter from Clemson's another one I think to watch for. I don't know how far down he was on this list. Must be a lot further. He's 83rd. He's 6'1", 230, though, so he's not as big. So you might be looking at Stutzman. You might be looking at Jahad Campbell and kind of going, yeah, those might be the guys for Green Bay at linebacker that they could look at to be the Mike. Is it a guarantee? Not necessarily. They might like who they have in-house. But, yeah, Chris Nsenku does weird stuff. And Lee wants to bring back Jack Heflin. That's a good shout. That's a really, really good one. But, yeah, I mean, the fallout from the trade was I don't, obviously nobody thought it was unexpected, right? There was a lot of talk about the trade with Preston potentially happening, and they were exploring that late last week. And then obviously you saw the bump in snaps for LVN on Sunday, and then it was kind of like, oh, they probably are going to do this. Is just a question of, are they going to get anybody back in return? And I think the fact that they didn't get anybody back in return, I think is just kind of opened the door, in my opinion, to kind of like, all right, let's start taking a look at these edge rushers and kind of see where Green Bay could go. Because I think, Adam Huddle's not here, and he kind of said this on Twitter. He goes, yeah, I mean, edge or corner in the first? And I'm like, yeah, probably. Maybe defensive line, but it's as Coach Len kind of brought up, I mean, it's probably one of these three, So that's probably where Green Bay's going to be looking, unless obviously BPA kind of dictates otherwise. Those are probably the positions you're going to be looking at. So, yeah, so there you go. I mean, a little kind of quick little stream on the Preston stuff. Hang out a little bit longer if anybody's got anything else, but obviously we'll have really quick. Chris N says need cornerback IMO. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, here, let's just do this since we're here. We're here, Chris. Let's get the corners pulled up just so you see. Because obviously I think just like edge, I think you're going to see a lot of them at the top of the board. Will Johnson, obviously, that's somebody we're probably going to do a film run on this channel pretty soon here just to get a good look at him early on in the cycle. But Morrison from Notre Dame, Siobhan Revel from East Carolina, who's been tremendous, did tear his knee up, unfortunately, during the season. Denzel Burke, who's been a bit up and down for Ohio State, he's been mocked to Green Bay if you've been looking at those. Jahdae Barron's interesting because he's been moving from slot safety, combination to more outside corner, and it's been going well. Tacario Davis, a little bit bigger. Maxwell Hairston could be interesting. Tommy Hill could be in that, like, oh, he played really well season before, this season not as good. Delane and Strong. Quincy Riley from Louisville is definitely somebody who everybody should pay attention to. Competes his butt off like another Louisville corner that we all know pretty well. Jabbar Muhammad's a little smaller. Hancock's interesting. It's not as strong at corner in terms of depth, at least from what I've seen to this point. Obviously, Travis Hunter's not on here because he's, I guess, listed at receiver. Yeah, he is listed at receiver here, so that's why he didn't show up. But yeah, I mean, I think corner is going to be an option for sure. And there are guys that are playing well that we'll get to a lot more once the draft's going, where you'll see the depth, I think, maybe show itself a little bit more. A lot of the same guys you heard in the summer are guys that are currently being looked at and evaluated as the season goes along. There are plenty of guys who haven't been given a good chance to be looked at this point, and people aren't digging deep enough, and they will, and we'll definitely get there. So, Coach Len says, what position on offense would you pick early in this draft? I mean, I have some thoughts for sure on that. He's probably not listed as a guard, which that's fine. Let's look at two here. I do think tackle and tackle that can be a guard, I think, is going to be a very popular thing set at the top of this draft, and for good reason. But also tight end. Tight end's going to be kind of loaded. I think we're going to see tight end looks kind of loaded heading into the draft, which I know Green Bay has Tucker Kraft, right? And Musgrave hasn't been healthy, and they've liked probably what they've gotten from Sims. But I'll tell you, I would love Kraft to be paired with somebody from this class, truthfully. But yeah, I think interior offensive line, especially at guard, guys who have played tackle, which Green Bay usually likes, right? That'll be definitely something in play. Running back is really good in this draft, and I mean really good. So, when you look at Will Campbell, right, the arm length is the question. It's going to be in the 32 range, but he's done really well. Technically, he has been really good for LSU this year at left tackle. teams may kick him inside, and he could probably be an elite guard just based on like how technical he is and how powerful he has shown to be. At tackle, Banks is another one that's probably going to be potentially kicked inside. Cameron Williams might be the darling at tackle, but he might not declare. Ursary from Minnesota is going to be talked about a lot at left tackle, and for good reason. Josh Simmons, if he didn't, suffer a season-ending injury, I think was on his way to potentially being the top tackle. And then you have Wyatt Millum from West Virginia, who's pretty darn good, who has been pretty darn good. So Green Bay could go in that direction. You see Arizona's got another guy in Savai Naea. And Oregon's got a couple guys. But if you look at tight end, just to throw it in here, just to take tackles off for a second, Loveland, really good. More of the, type you talk about in this day and age of like, yeah, this guy's, the route runner, the field stretcher, makes a lot of plays. In the passing game, he's right there. Tyler Warren has been unbelievable for Penn State this year, and PFF certainly thinks so as well. But he'll still do some of the dirty work, and they snap him the ball. He takes direct snaps. He's thrown the ball this year. He's been kind of the running back on some plays where he's getting direct snaps, like I said. But he's done some dirty work in protections, right? Down blocking in the run game, helping out in pass pro. Like, he's been doing that at a pretty high level. Gazdin's definitely more of a receiver, right? 6'5", 236. Harold Fannon's been really good. Really, really, really good. Super productive. Receiving guy for sure, but great body control, great at the catch point. Like, all of that is very, very tremendous. I think Gunnar Helm's been really good this year for Texas as well at 6'5", 250. PFF doesn't agree. That's fair. And obviously, Iowa's got a guy. Ferguson is interesting, but I do think tight end is going to be deeper than we think it is. And that'll happen come draft time. So, yeah, I think I'd stick with guard or tight end. Running back, though, is really loaded. If Green Bay wanted to go that direction, I don't think they will. But you never know. You never know about wide receiver. Like, there's extensions to be had coming up. And I'm being serious. And I know, Chris, I do like receiver position just because I feel like I can detail that position a lot better than most other ones, or really all of the other ones. But I do think there is a chance, right? You have extensions coming up, right? Watson and Dobbs each have 1 year after this. So that's something to watch. And Wicks and Reed will be, halfway through their rookie contracts when this season ends. Like, you probably could have that conversation this offseason. Well, they'll definitely have it in 2026. But you could have it this offseason. That's possible. Prince Capsaicin saying throwing in center. Yeah, Brailsford's been good. He's a redshirt sophomore for Bama. Monheim has played a lot of places for USC to this point. Jake Slaughter's been really good at Florida. These are the only three that PFF has on there, but there are others as well. Marcus Mbo from Purdue could potentially be kicking in there, kicking into guard for sure. So there are some centers. It's not the deepest from what I can see at this point, but again, things will change. At tackle, there's a few guys who have, hopefully, I don't know if he's on here. We got to go find him just because we're here. Let's go find this guy if he's here. I don't know if he is. This guy is one, Charles Grant, from William and Mary. Maybe a little undersized. He's probably not 300, even though he's listed at it. But he's been dominant. Small school guy, I get it, but he could be very good, so they don't have him on here. Zabel, I think it is, from North Dakota State, has played left tackle, left guard, right tackle. So he's somebody to watch for as well, who has played a lot of spots. So if they want to go offensive line, especially guys who could kick inside, I think they're going to have that option. Coach Len says, do we need to take a look at left tackle? Where does Morgan play moving forward? Yeah, we talked about this last week quite a bit. It was kind of like, well, I don't remember who asked it. I think it might have been Fred. Fred asked it last week. It was like, do you think Green Bay's left tackle in 2026 is on the roster currently? It was a lot to process, and it was kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe. Rasheed Walker, do they believe in him enough? If the guard thing doesn't work for Jordan Morgan, though we've seen him play left tackle at a high level, could easily kick over there. So I feel like between those two, I think you do have your left tackle for quite a while. Doesn't mean I wouldn't look. Doesn't mean I wouldn't be taking a shot on somebody. If you believe in someone like Charles Grant later in the draft, we'll see how late he goes. It might probably can be a 3rd-round pick when everything is said and done because he'll go show out in Mobile or something like that. But yeah, I don't think you can completely discount it. But like I do think they probably have their left tackle on the roster. But again, they've developed guys. They've held on to Caleb Jones and Tenuta and all those guys for a while, so they very well could add somebody to the mix, at least from a developmental standpoint. Probably the starter, though, is probably taken care of. So, but yeah, I think just to obviously quickly talk about this, right? And this was more of a discussion when we weren't sure if Jacobs, the essential 1-year deal thing was going on, and you've seen Emmanuel Wilson kind of emerge, and they have a rookie in Marshawn Lloyd, but running back is insanely deep this year. It's insanely deep. Lee says he's going to have to rewatch later. For guys to watch, good one. Appreciate you, Lee. Appreciate you commenting and stopping by. Always fun to have you in here. But yeah, I mean, the running back class, Genties is a stud. Judkins has been really, really good. Omarion Hampton, RJ Harvey has been dominant at UCF, doesn't get kind of the exposure as some others. Obviously, Ollie Gordon has a lot of that early season hype. Travion Anderson, Manan guy. Caleb Johnson's been awesome this year for Iowa. Le'Veon Moss just got hurt, unfortunately, and is done for the year. Jaden Ott had 2 insanely productive seasons at Cal, taking a little bit of a step back according to PFF, but when he's healthy, he's been a monster. Devin Neal is super good. Taj Brooks has had 100 yards in every game this season that he's played. The only other one to do that is Genty. And like it's loaded. Trevor Etienne's in there. Giddens from Kansas State has been awesome. Woody Marks from SC. Singleton's got so much potential. Jordan James has been really good at this is insane how loaded this class is. Scatabo's been really fun at ASU, and then Rocket Sanders, who was thought of as a potential top guy, right, a year ago back in the summers. He was heralded because he had a big year in 22. Doesn't have the best 23 transfers, but I mean, there's a reason this is 2 pages. It's a loaded group at running back. I don't think Green Bay's probably going to go that direction, but just something to know as we move forward. So yeah, I think when you look at it right now in terms of the Preston trade and what that means, I think it just needs to prep you for the potential of Green Bay going, defensive end / edge rusher again early in the draft. A la what they did with Van Ness, what they did with Gary in 2019. Goody has made that very clear. He'll spend premium picks at premium position, right? And when you look at offensive line and corner and what he's done, there he has stuck to, other than when he had extra selections right in the first round, right? As now I'm thinking about it, I'm just going over it, right? He's gone the safety and linebacker route with Savage and Quay, but when he's had 1 pick, it's usually been a premium position. So it's just something to monitor as we're going forward. But I think that's probably going to be it for tonight. I appreciate the chat coming through. Obviously, this was kind of a late scheduling, or it's just kind of like, oh yeah, Packers made a trade. All right, might as well do that. And then the more you think about the trade, the more you think about how this affects the draft, I'm like, well, might as well go live. But a couple quick things as we get out of here tonight. Might have another show this week. We'll see how far along I get with a lot of the evaluations from the first half from this Green Bay team, but there's going to be videos this week, right? Tucker Kraft is probably going to be the first one just to see, his growth in year 2. I'm going to be writing something on the receivers. and how they've done to this point. That'll be written up over on the Substack, which if you look on my channel homepage, you'll see the link for that, and that'll be over there. But there'll be a lot of film. We're probably going to look at Morgan and see how he's done. We're definitely going to be looking at the defensive line, which we talked about, at length at the beginning, and how LVN and Gary have been adjusting to this, and whatever else. As I mentioned, make sure you comment, on some of the videos, what you want to see. I'm going to post some polls for sure to kind of get your feedback on what you want to see on the channel from a Packers perspective, because I think that's everybody in here for sure. But I'm also going to have some rookie stuff and some young player and receiver film rooms as well. So anytime you click on any of those, much appreciated. And hopefully, not sure, but I want to get a draft prospect out there soon on the channel, some film room. So if you want to see somebody like Will Johnson, or I can't do the SEC guys, that'll be over on the Patreon, but that link is on the channel homepage as well. So a lot of stuff coming. Hope you guys will be there to check it out, and hopefully we'll be able to chat in the comments section about all of it. But yeah, for that, really quick, as Coach Len drops the final question of the night, what round does Scatabo go? Do you think he's from my hometown of Sacramento? Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously when we went down the list of running backs, right, not everybody's going to necessarily declare, but obviously Scatabo is one that, yeah, he is a senior, and he's been really good. And I think, he'll probably have the opportunity to go down to the Senior Bowl, get some more exposure there. But he has a chance to stand out. Contact balance has been incredible this year. I think third round is very, very possible for him, even in a deep class, just because I think he has shown a lot of the more underrated traits that we feel like we don't prioritize as much. You look at the speed and the explosion and how quick someone can cut, and that's all great. And using your quicks to cut and tackle avoidance, that's a great way to do it. But also being able to run between the tackles, win with some contact balance, win with some processing and instincts, that matters too. And I think Scatabo can bring that to the table. So yeah, I think round 3 is very much in the possibility for him. So yeah, I'm excited to probably see him down in Mobile. Lots of miles on those legs. Yeah, Arizona State has definitely given him quite a bit of carries. He's had 196 carries in 22, 164, 23, 174 this year. Yeah, I mean, he's been excellent, though. Zone, gap, elusiveness, yards after contact per attempt are all really, really good. So, I mean, yes, a lot of miles on the legs, but, for running backs, a lot of the time, right, it's a kind of a one contract deal. And so they might get, as much as they can out of him on that first contract. But I've liked what I've seen in the live viewings at the very least with Scatabo. I can't wait to kind of dive in further on players like him to see how he stacks up to the class, because it's going to be a good one. So Coach Len says ran a bunch at Sacramento State as well. Sacramento State has an offensive lineman that people are talking about recently that I want to get to. And the name is escaping me right now. So that's another guy at the offensive line who probably should be paying attention to at the very least, because, again, offensive line is a very, very important position. But, yeah, that'll kind of do it for the night, guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in, right, from Chris N., who said, obviously, thank you at the end there. Joseph, Prince Capsace, and Mike Berry, too old for this. Coach Len, of course, So Turtles, Lee as well. It was a lot of you four really kind of carrying the stream there at the end, but I appreciate it a lot. Yeah, thank you guys. Hit that thumbs up on the way out if you can. Don't think any new subscribers are here, but always appreciate kind of the day ones and those who show up to these things all the time. You guys are awesome. I will catch you guys at the very least on the video side of things, but yeah, we're gonna have another show at the very least next week before Green Bay plays. Might be 2 next week. Get kind of the full evaluation stream, and then we'll kind of preview the game. But yeah, wherever I'll see you. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and go Pack Go.